My mother laughed when I asked for help. Actually laughed. Not a nervous chuckle or an uncomfortable giggle. A real laugh, like I'd told her a joke. $12,000? She said, still laughing. Ashley, maybe you should have gotten scholarships like your sister. Madison earned her education, you just attended. I was standing in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the pile of student loan statements on my counter. $12,000. That's all I had left. I'd worked 30 hours a week through college, taken summer classes to graduate early, applied for every grant I could find. $12,000 was my mountain. My parents had just paid off Madison's loans. All of them. $180,000, written off in a single check because my sister mentioned she was stressed about finances. I said nothing to my mother. Just let the silence stretch until she got uncomfortable and made an excuse to hang up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was bothering me. Not just the money, though, that stung. Something about what Mom said. Scholarships. Madison's scholarships. I'd lived with my sister for 18 years. I'd watched her barely scrape through the high school, copying homework, charm-talking teachers into extensions. I'd never once heard about a scholarship. Not when she got into college. Not during. Not after. So I did something I should have done years ago. I started looking. It took me 3 hours and one phone call to my Aunt Catherine, who'd worked in the registrar's office at Madison's University for 22 years. "You want her academic records?" Aunt Catherine said slowly. "Ashley, honey, why?" "Because Mom just told me Madison got scholarships, and I don't think that's true." Silence, then a long sigh. "Come over tomorrow. Bring coffee. This is going to be a long conversation." The next morning, Aunt Catherine slid a folder across her kitchen table. Inside were Madison's transcripts. 4 years of grades, enrollment status, and financial records. I read them twice because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Madison's GPA, 2.1. Academic probation, twice, sophomore year and junior year. Scholarships, 0, not 1, not ever. She'd nearly been expelled her second year for failing 3 classes in 1 semester. My parents had paid $180,000 for a student who almost flunked out, and they'd told me she earned it. I called my mother back that evening, kept my voice calm, steady. "Hey, Mom, quick question. What scholarships did Madison get exactly? I'm trying to apply for some similar ones for my cousin's daughter." Mom's voice tightened. "Why are you asking about that?" "Just curious. You said she earned her education. I figured she must have had some good ones to cover 4 years at a private university." More silence. Then, "I don't remember the specific names. It was years ago." "That's interesting," I said, "because I found her transcripts. Academic probation twice, 2.1 GPA, no scholarships on record, not a single one." Click. She hung up. My father called 10 minutes later. His voice was different than I'd ever heard it. Shaky, almost pleading. "Ashley, we need to talk. Don't do anything rash. Your mother is very upset." I smiled in the dark of my apartment. "I'm sure she is. But Dad, I'm not the one who's been lying for 8 years. Let me take you back, because this story isn't about $12,000 or a phone call or even the lie about scholarships. It's about growing up invisible in a family that only had eyes for one daughter. The scholarship lie was just the latest in a lifetime of them. If you've ever been the unfavorite child, if you've ever worked twice as hard for half the recognition, if you've ever wondered why your best was never enough while someone else's bare minimum was celebrated, this story is for you. Madison is 3 years older than me. Growing up, those 3 years might as well have been 30. She was the firstborn, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the accident, the afterthought, the one who came along when my parents thought they were done having kids. Mom never said that directly, but I pieced it together from comments over the years. We weren't planning on another one. The house was too small once you arrived. Madison was such an easy only child. Little cuts that added up to one clear message. I was a complication in a life that had already been planned without me. The favoritism started before I could even recognize it. I've seen the photo albums. Madison's first 5 years are documented in 3 thick books. Every milestone, every outfit, every smile captured and preserved. My baby photos fit in half of one album, mostly group shots where I'm a blur in someone's arms. When I pointed this out once, at 16, Mom said I was being dramatic. We were just busier by then. 2 kids is harder than 1. But they weren't too busy to take Madison to dance classes, gymnastics, art lessons, summer camps. They found time for all of that. They found money for all of that. I got hand-me-down activities, whatever Madison had quit that season, and I was supposed to be grateful. School made the difference clearer. Madison struggled academically from the start. Not because she wasn't smart, she was smart enough. She just didn't try. Homework was beneath her. Studying was boring. She coasted on charm and excuses and a face that teachers wanted to believe. When she brought home C's and D's, my parents hired tutors, bought special programs, had conferences with teachers about learning styles and different kinds of intelligence. When I brought home straight A's while working a part-time job starting at 14, they nodded and moved on. Ashley's the easy one, Mom would say, like it was a flaw, like requiring less meant deserving less. The money disparity became impossible to ignore in high school. Madison wanted a car for her 16th birthday. She got a car. A used Honda, sure, but still a car, plus insurance, plus gas money. I wanted the same thing at 16. Reasonable, right? Same milestone, same request. Money's tighter now, Dad said. You can save up from your job. I was already saving, for college, because even at 16, I somehow knew that whatever help Madison got, I'd be getting less. Madison got into a private university through what I now know was a combination of legacy connections and my father's donation to the alumni fund. $47,000 a year, all in. I remember the celebration dinner, the tears in Mom's eyes, the champagne toast. Our girl is going to do amazing things, Dad said, raising his glass. Madison smiled like she'd accomplished something, when really my parents had just bought her a spot she hadn't earned. I got into the same university, actually, plus 3 others, all with better programs for my major. I'd worked for those acceptances, SAT prep on my own dime, essay drafts revised 15 times, extracurriculars I'd built from scratch. When I showed my parents the acceptance letters, Mom glanced at them and said, "That's nice, honey. Have you considered community college first? It's more practical." Practical, because spending $47,000 a year on Madison was an investment, but spending anything on me was an expense. I went to state school. A good state school, but still. $17,000 a year versus $47,000. I worked 30 hours a week at a campus bookstore to cover what my partial scholarships didn't. Real scholarships, by the way, merit-based. I earned those with grades and essays and the desperate hunger of someone who knew no one was coming to save her. I graduated in 3.5 years, summa cum laude, with $12,000 in loans. Madison took 5 years to graduate. 5 years at $47,000 per year, plus housing, plus meal plans, plus the spending money my parents sent monthly. No scholarships, no job. Just pure parental funding for a 2.1 GPA and 2 rounds of academic probation. Have you ever done the math on your own family's favoritism? I did. Junior year of college, Late one night when I should have been studying. Madison's education, roughly $235,000 total. Mine, around $68,000, of which my scholarships and my job covered about $56,000. My parents contributed maybe $12,000 to my entire education over 4 years, $3,000 per year. They gave Madison nearly $50,000 per year. And when I graduated with honors, working my way through, they didn't throw a party. They came to the ceremony, took some photos, and left early because Madison had brunch plans they didn't want to miss. I moved to Denver after graduation, got a job in marketing, entry-level but promising. Started paying off my loans immediately, $400 a month, sometimes more when I could manage it. I was down to $12,000, almost there. Almost free. Meanwhile, Madison had moved back home after college because she needed time to figure things out. That time stretched into 3 years. 3 years of living rent-free with our parents, working part-time jobs she quit whenever they got boring, dating a series of guys who never lasted. And the whole time, her loans just sat there. Gathering interest, growing. The phone call that changed everything came on a random Tuesday. I'd called Mom to check in, make small talk, maintain the bare minimum relationship we'd settled into. She mentioned casually that they'd finally helped Madison with her student loans. I assumed she meant helped. A payment. Maybe a few thousand to get her back on track. "That's nice," I said. "How much did you give her?" "All of it. We just wrote a check for the balance, $180,000. I actually stopped walking, stood frozen on the sidewalk outside my apartment building. $180,000. Just like that. Written off because Madison was stressed. "She's been so anxious about it," Mom continued. "We couldn't let her suffer. She's our daughter." "I'm also your daughter," I thought but didn't say. I asked about my loans instead. The $12,000 that had been weighing on me for years. The $12,000 I'd been sacrificing vacations and dinners out and new clothes to pay down every month. Could they help with that? That's when Mom laughed. That's when she said the thing about scholarships. That's when she implied that Madison had earned something and I hadn't. And that's when I knew everything I'd suspected my entire life was true. Not just favoritism. Lies. The thing about being the unfavored child is that you learn to be quiet. You learn to accept. You learn that fighting only makes things worse because you're arguing with people who've already decided you don't matter. So I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I just hung up and started gathering evidence. If they wanted to lie to me, fine. But I was going to know the truth. Aunt Catherine, my father's sister, had never liked how my parents treated me. She'd made comments over the years, careful ones about fairness and both girls deserving support. But she'd never directly intervened. Family loyalty, I suppose. When I called her that night and asked about Madison's records, she was quiet for a long moment. "I wondered when you'd start asking questions," she finally said. "I've been waiting for years." The folder she gave me the next morning contained more than just transcripts. There were financial aid records showing Madison had never applied for a single scholarship. Not one. There were academic warnings she'd never told our parents about, or more likely had told them and they'd buried. There was a letter from the dean's office, her junior year, informing her she was one failed class away from expulsion. And there was a record of the donation my father had made that same semester to the university's new library fund. $15,000. Coincidentally, Madison's grades were adjusted that same month. She was allowed to stay. I sat at Aunt Catherine's kitchen table, reading through years of lies, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, relief. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined the favoritism or invented the inequality. It was all right here. Documented. Undeniable. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Aunt Catherine refilled my coffee. Because you needed to see it yourself. And because I was hoping your parents would eventually do the right thing. They didn't. What would you do with proof that your family had been lying to you your entire life? I thought about it for 3 days. Considered just walking away, cutting ties, letting the truth rot in that folder forever. But I kept coming back to Mom's laugh, that dismissive, cruel laugh when I asked for help. She hadn't just said no. She'd laughed. She'd implied I deserved less because I hadn't earned what Madison had earned. Except Madison hadn't earned anything. She'd failed her way through 4 years of college while I worked myself to exhaustion for a degree I'd actually achieved. No, I wasn't walking away. I was going to make them say it out loud. Dad's call after I mentioned the transcripts was panicked. Ashley, please, come to dinner this weekend. We can talk about this as a family. Don't make any decisions yet. I agreed. Not because I thought talking would help, but because I wanted to see their faces. I wanted Madison there. I wanted to watch the lie collapse. Saturday dinner at my parents' house felt like walking into a courtroom. Mom was overly cheerful, that fake brightness she used when she was nervous. Dad was quiet, watchful. Madison arrived late, breezing in with her usual confidence, clearly not told what this was about. Ashley, finally visiting. What's the occasion? Mom and Dad wanted a family dinner, I said. Something about clearing the air. Mom shot me a warning look. Dad cleared his throat. We sat down to eat. The conversation was painfully normal for the first 20 minutes. Weather, work, Madison's latest boyfriend, who was definitely the one, despite them dating for 6 weeks. I waited. Let them get comfortable. Then, during a pause in conversation, I pulled out the folder, set it on the table, opened it. So I've been doing some research, I said. About scholarships. Mom, remember you told me Madison earned her education? I wanted to understand how she did it. What scholarships she got. You know, for inspiration. Madison's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Mom went pale. Dad stared at the folder like it was a bomb. What is this? Madison asked, reaching for the papers. I let her take them, watched her face as she flipped through. The transcripts, the academic warnings, the financial aid records showing 0 scholarships. Where did you get these? She demanded. The registrar's office. I kept my voice calm, steady. Turns out your university keeps very detailed records. Also turns out you had a 2.1 GPA, were on academic probation twice, and never received a single scholarship. Not one. For 4 years. I looked at my mother. So when you told me Madison earned her education and I should have been more like her, what exactly did you mean? Because from what I'm seeing, she almost flunked out and you paid $200,000 to keep her enrolled. The silence stretched. Madison threw the folder on the table. This is such bullshit. You're digging through my private records because you're jealous? I'm not jealous, Madison. I graduated summa cum laude while working 30 hours a week. You barely graduated at all. And yet, Mom and Dad just wrote you a check for $180,000 and laughed when I asked for help with 12. I just want to understand the logic. Mom started crying. Actual tears, like she was the victim here. This isn't fair. You're attacking your sister. You're tearing this family apart. I'm asking questions, I said. Questions you've been avoiding for 8 years. Why did you tell me Madison had scholarships when she didn't? Why did you pay for everything for her and almost nothing for me? Why did you laugh when I asked for help? No answer. Just Mom's tears and Dad's silence and Madison's fury. Dad finally spoke. Ashley, you have to understand. Madison needed more support. You were always fine on your own. Independent. Capable. We knew you'd figure it out. So I got less because I needed less? That's your defense? It's not a defense, it's just how things were. How things were is that you raised 2 daughters and decided one of them mattered more. You told me to be more like Madison while knowing her entire academic record was a disaster you paid to cover up. You created a fantasy about her earning things and told me I'd failed in comparison. Do you understand how that felt? Being compared to a standard that never existed? Madison stood up. I don't have to listen to this. You've always been jealous of me, Ashley. Always. This is just you finding a new way to make yourself the victim. I'm not the victim. I'm just not pretending anymore. She stormed out. Her usual exit strategy, leave before anyone can hold her accountable. Mom followed, pleading with her. Dad and I sat alone at the table. Are you going to tell people? He asked quietly. About Madison's grades? The donation? I thought about it. I could. I could post those transcripts everywhere, tell every relative, watch Madison's carefully constructed image crumble. But what would that actually change? What would it give me? No, I said. I'm not going to tell anyone, but I'm also not going to keep pretending everything is fine. I'm not coming to family dinners where I'm treated like a second-class citizen. I'm not listening to Mom praise Madison's accomplishments that don't exist. And I'm not asking you for anything ever again. Dad looked old suddenly, tired. Ashley, please. We made mistakes. We see that now. But you can't just cut us off. I'm not cutting you off. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. He didn't seem to understand the difference. I wasn't sure he ever would. I paid off my remaining loan 6 months later. Did it myself? Extra shifts and side gigs, and a promotion I earned through actual work? The day I made that final payment, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not from happiness exactly, from something more complicated. Grief, maybe. For the parents I wished I'd had. For the sister I might have been close to if we'd been treated fairly. For all the years I'd spent believing their lies about who deserved what. My relationship with my parents is different now. Distant but civil. We talk monthly instead of weekly. I visit twice a year instead of every holiday. They've never apologized for the money imbalance or the scholarship lie. Instead, they've rewritten history, convinced themselves the situation was complicated and I'm overreacting. Mom still cries whenever I bring it up, which is how she's avoided accountability her whole life. I've stopped bringing it up. Madison and I don't speak. Not because I'm holding a grudge, but because she's never acknowledged anything was wrong. In her mind, she deserved everything she got, and I'm just bitter. I've made peace with that. Some relationships aren't worth the energy it takes to maintain them. Aunt Catherine and I are closer than ever. She's the family I choose, the one who saw the truth and didn't make me feel crazy for noticing it. She sends me articles about boundary setting and books about family dynamics. Last Christmas, we started a tradition of having dinner together, just the two of us, instead of suffering through the tension at my parents' house. 3 years after the dinner table confrontation, Madison called me. Out of nowhere, no warning, her name on my phone like a ghost from another life. I almost didn't answer. Ashley, I need a favor. Her voice was strained. None of the usual breezy confidence. I'm in a tough spot financially. The boyfriend I was with, we broke up, and I'm behind on rent. I need to borrow some money. Just until I get back on my feet. I listened to my sister ask me for money. My sister who had received $200,000 from our parents while I got scraps. My sister who had laughed with Mom about my jealousy and never once acknowledged the inequality. My sister who was now behind on rent because she'd never learned that money doesn't just appear when you need it, because for her, it always had. How much do you need? I asked. Just $5,000. I'll pay you back. $5,000. Less than 3% of what our parents had given her. No, I said. What? No, I'm not lending you money, Madison. Ashley, come on, I'm your sister. Family helps family. Does it? Where was family helping family when I was working 30 hours a week to pay for school? Where was family helping family when Mom laughed at me for asking about my $12,000 in loans while she wrote you a check for $180? Silence, then bitterly. You're still on that? That was years ago. Let it go. I have let it go, I said, and I meant it. But letting go doesn't mean I owe you anything. You got more than your fair share, Madison. A lot more. This is where it stops. She hung up without saying goodbye. Classic Madison. I put down my phone and went back to making dinner. Didn't feel guilty. Didn't feel vindictive. Just felt done. I'm 29 now. Regional marketing director at a company I love. Engaged to a man named Daniel who treats me like I matter because I do. I own a condo that I bought with money I earned. Every single thing in my life I built myself. Not because I had to prove anything to my parents or my sister. Because I learned young that the only person I could count on was me. That lesson cost me a childhood of feeling invisible, and a sister I might have loved. But it also gave me everything I have now: independence, self-respect, a life that's mine. Madison, last I heard, is on her third restart. New city, new job, new boyfriend. Still struggling, still blaming everyone else, still waiting for someone to save her. Maybe she'll figure it out eventually. Maybe she won't. It's not my problem anymore. My parents still don't understand why I'm distant. They've convinced themselves I'm holding a grudge over ancient history. But it's not about the money anymore. It was never really about the money. It was about being told my whole life that I was less than, that I deserved less, that I should be grateful for scraps while my sister feasted. It was about the lie that she earned what she got, and I hadn't earned anything at all. The money was just how they measured it. The wound was so much deeper. If you've ever been the unfavorite child, this story is for you. If you've ever worked harder than anyone and been told it wasn't enough, this story is for you. If you've ever suspected your family was lying about who deserved what, trust your instincts. Sometimes the truth is exactly as bad as you think, and sometimes finding that truth is the only way to set yourself free. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered a family lie that changed how you saw everything? How did you handle it? I read every story. And if you want more stories about people who stopped accepting unfair treatment and started demanding the truth, subscribe. Sometimes the quietest rebellion is just refusing to pretend anymore.